Fellow citizens of all nations. The Rebel, an essay on men in revolt by Albert Camus. This work tries to answer to the question of why do we kill? Why do we destroy each other? And we are going to answer to that question right now. Let's try to answer to that question. And ultimately, like everything comes down to the master and the slave relation. And we're going to explore these things more detail right now. So let's go through the notes. We shall know nothing until we know whether we have the right to kill our fellow men or the right to let them be killed. In that every action today leads to murder. Direct or indirect, we cannot act until we know whether or why we have the right to kill. And here's a key thing. We cannot act until we know whether or why we have the right to kill. And that the why, the answer can be as biased as you can imagine to the question. But here's another thing here. The direct or indirect. It's a very crucial mentioning here, because what if you just let them just die and do nothing about it? But what do you know? For example, if you know that some sort of genocide, etc., is going on in some part of the world, and just you are not involved in it, but you will just let it happen. Like, it's indirect because your choice of not doing nothing, it was already a choice. Basically, by you doing nothing, you agreed on it, whether we like it or not. Basically, you're like, okay, because you did not try to involve yourself there. He himself destroys, but in order to try to create. Essentially, my enemies are those who want to destroy without creating themselves. And this can be as well the justification, for example. Justification of, I'm destroying because of to create. And it's a justification, perfect alibi. Life is a farce for the whole world to perform. Like, it is truly a farce. Like, so many, like the human society generally, it's like, and life is a farce. Like, look at the history, for example, and the people that are heavily nationalist and heavily whatever involved, the beliefs they are told, and they are like, oh, we were right in that war and you guys were evil. That's why we're fighting you. No, the trust is that if you are pointing your finger to them, it's like you are the winner. This is what it means. Your side was the winner, and you are pointing your finger toward the losers. Why? Because there is no right or wrong. There is no, there is no justice or evil in war and in the conflicts. It's like the virtue of the mighty, the virtue of the strongest. This is where it comes down to. The justice is in the interest of the strongest, because only the strong can demand justice, while the weak has no say. So the justice is by definition something that only the strong can achieve, the strongest can achieve, while the loser is just loser, and that's all. Loser is all the evil, while the winner is the angel, the best. That's the thing. Winners write history. What do you think it means? Like, people don't like to think deeply about what it means. Like, winners write history. There is no right or wrong. There is no better. They're just winner and loser. And the winner is right and loser is wrong. That's all. If the place were switched, then the winner will be still right and the loser will be still wrong. That's it. And this is not a beautiful something or beautiful reality, but this is known as the reality. Man is the only creature who refuses to be what he is. It is so. Like, and I don't think that this is necessarily and this is not a bad thing. Basically, it's a good thing. Like because like to just be an animal that sleeps around, eats and etc., and just does nothing, invents nothing, has no goals, and come on, that's to be in primitive life and to have that primitive lifestyle, and because that's what we are supposed to be, like, to fuck around and to just do nothing, like, that's all. Like, should we just do that? No, of course not. We should have our ambitions and etc. toward the stars and Except that's I think what makes us human and what we refer to when we mean the human being. We don't mean by that the primate we are, but those aspirations and those dreams and etc. And now, who is the rebel essentially? The rebel is the one that says no. A slave who has taken orders all his life suddenly decides that he cannot obey some new command, and that's all. And that's the basically definition of the rebel. The very moment the slave refuses to obey the humiliating orders of his master, he simultaneously rejects the condition of slavery. And here I remember the Spartan boy, which Stoics remembered very well, that refused to fetch the chamber pot and committed suicide instead. And the Stoics remembered him, this action of this boy, and admire him very much. Better to die on one's feet than to live on one's knees. All or nothing. Essentially, for example, I would rather be free and die standing on my feet than be slave on my knees. The spirit of rebellion can exist only in a society where theoretical equality conceals great factual inequalities. The problem of rebellion, therefore, has no meaning except within our own Western society. Rebellion cannot exist in a society where there is strong caste systems and etc. And even though the Western values are exported, in many places it's not. And there is, for example, the strong family, and the elder of the family should be obeyed unconditionally, whatever the elder wants, etc. Essentially, the problem of the rebellion, therefore, has no meaning except within our Western society, or people that strongly share the Western values of Western society. Because there are these parts of it. Basically, in those other cultures, the family is also the kind of caste system itself. In the family, whatever the family wants and whatever the elder of the family, it must be obeyed, etc. Unquestionably. Basically, family plays the part of the god. Actual freedom has not increased in proportion to man's awareness of it. We can only deduce from this observation that rebellion is the act of an educated man who is aware of his own rights. The disease experienced by a single man becomes a mass plague, and this is not only about, by the way, the direct disease or malady. This is about ideologies as well. And you can look at some religions and etc. So it's not directly about the virus that physically kills us, but the virus that infects our mind and forces us to behave as some sort of diseased person and do some atrocities because we believe in this how can I say respectful, in this absurd. So this is also the thing. Or like it's a plague experienced by a small number of individuals, it spreads this ideology and etc. And ideologies destroy. We can say that the Roman Empire wasn't destroyed. The main reason was the ideology. Because of the ideology of the Roman Empire, mainly fell. The slave begins by demanding justice and ends up by wanting to wear a crown. And this is the problem of the master and slave relation. And the best example of this is the Spartacus rebellion, and it's even in the Roman Empire. Basically, Spartacus and the first one that rebelled, they were gladiators. So they were very well-trained professional fighters. Basically, their rebellion becomes huge, and other slaves also join them, etc. And they demand justice, and they want to be free. And here's what they do: like they, for example, take some Roman village, etc. places, and they capture the Roman citizens. And do you know what they do? They let them fight as gladiators to each other. They even thought they started by demanding justice, and they are like, we refuse to be slaves. Now they want to wear the crown. They don't want to destroy the Rome. They don't want to destroy Rome. They want to replace the Rome. They want to change the dynamic. They were slaves. Now they want to become the masters and enslave the correct masters and make them their slaves. So the dynamic change, the master-slave relation, the paradox. Once slave rises and demands the justice, which is justifiable demand, and it's justifiable. Now it won't, but there's something it wants to replace the master. And the many rebellions and in fact, rebellion is like that. The revolution is when different thing. The revolution is when mindset is different as well. The rebellion is essentially when the correct slave wants to just replace the master. That's a rebellion. The revolution is when the mindset that changes. So this is a difference between those two words. Now, the myth of Prometheus is an eternal martyr chained to a pillar, and the Prometheus, and for example, for some of you that know the Georgian mythology, it's an Amirani. It's a kind of same myth about the man basically that is chained because he brought kindness to human beings and fought, basically brought fire to and basically useful things to human beings, and fought the unjust gods, and because of his kindness he gets punished. So he's chained, and basically gods punish him, and his heart is eaten every day, and it somehow heals later, and basically the eagle arrives later as well, and basically this is something that continues eternally, this cycle. So he is fighting the unjust gods, as if he's fighting this evil of the world, those unjust beings that torture us and torment us and mock us. The gods that are unjust, and it represents the side, and these are the hero, the Amirani, is the one that fights for humanity. So basically, his hatred toward the gods. Why should evil be punished when we can easily see here on earth that goodness is not rewarded? Just this question alone is like, why should evil be punished when we can easily see here on earth that goodness is not rewarded? It's just a question, and what a powerful question it is. And again, there is no what I talk about this, like there is no justice, like it's just all about circumstances, and it's about the strong. The weak has no say. Intelligence in chains loses in lucidity what it gains in intensity. And here's about there's an observation about the men. Men are lazy rather than cowardly, and they prefer peace and death to the liberty of discerning between good and evil. Now, I would say that men are both. They are lazy and cowardly as well. But it says that they are just lazy, which is also interesting observation. They are just lazy. But the second part, we can debate whether they are just only lazy rather than cowardly, or both of them. But that's not the main point here. What they prefer is interesting here. They prefer peace and death to the liberty of discerning between good and evil. They essentially prefer to be not involved in some important matters and etc. Just like there is a saying, right? The evil wins because the good people do nothing about it. So, and it can be understood as well when, basically, if in democratic society, the people that are this lazy, they fail to make this difference. And I don't like also the difference between just good and evil. It's like it's just a simplification of the things, just to talk about in good and evil sense, because it's clearly it's not the way. But let's say the people that fail to elect, and they elect the evil, what happens then? Or not one that is the best choice. Is it the fault of a power, or is it fault of the people? Because usually we blame the power. He has pity, a cold pity for the silent prisoners whom history endlessly deceives. Oh, this is the very cruel words in reality. Not very cruel, but very form of a mockery, because he has a pity, a cold pity for the silent prisoners whom history endlessly deceives. Well, silent prisoners are basically history endlessly deceives. Why they deceive? We already talked about this thing. Not face, but deeds. It's also the mindset of, okay, it's not about what you believe, but what are you up to. The rebel who at first denies God finally aspires to replace him. This is, by the way, about the rebel. So, like, the rebel does not look at the God as something that stands above. At best, rebel just looks at God as his equal. The rebel don't, like, even, like, and this is, by the way, a problem of so-called atheists. Like, many atheists, like, even if Supreme Being were to appear, they would not still be like, oh, Lord. They would, like, at best talk to him as his equal. But there will be as well many that would just consider that being an evil being. Because of the for all these justice, because this is the only two things we are up to, essentially. Either there is no omnipotent God, essentially, and there is essentially God is not omnipotent, and it means that we are free and we are responsible for all the evil, or there is essentially the God that is omnipotent, and if that God is omnipotent and knowing Almighty and etc., then that God is evil, because that God it's his fault. It's not our fault. It's not my fault or your fault or anyone's fault. It's his fault. And rebel eternal alibi is the love of mankind, and it's the alibi of the rebel generally. Rebel does not really love mankind. History is governed by laws which are conditioned by cowardice of individuals. Interesting, by the way. Before we call, basically, this is as well another thing about the history. So let's leave it there. Suicide of the mind would be, for example, what would be suicide of the mind? When you make yourself believe absurd. It can be defined as suicide of the mind. Now, Andre Breton said something which most likely he has regretted, but nonetheless it's very interesting. So let's review it. The simplest, and here is what said. The simplest surrealist act consists in going out into the street, revolver in hand, and shooting at random into the crowd. And then this is the... And by the way, if you don't know, if you should pause this video and check the surrealism and the art they produce, and surrealism art, it's very fascinating and very interesting, and to also make you understand the surrealism better. So basically, this is an absurd action, what Andre Breton suggests. But at the same time, he says that this is the simplest surrealist act. It's a simplest surrealist act, essentially. And what is it? Like, what kind of absurd it is? As if what he means is to demonstrate the absurdity of life by his action. And by the way, this is the rebellion simultaneously against society and against the reason. This is this behavior is to rebel against society and rebel against reason at the same time. And what Andre Breton here suggests, it's the same thing essentially to play basically to take a revolver and put the one bullet and just play the guess on basically this, pull the trigger and take the guess if you will die or not. So it's like so the surrealism is like very hard to define. Like once you look at the arts, like you will just look at just like the art. Like you will look at the art and you don't know what to make of it. Like it is like you don't know what to think about it. And here's later what he concludes. Surrealism is perhaps only an unbearable form of wisdom. And this is the great thing, the great observation, because it is also the absolute proof that there is no comfortable form of wisdom. And surrealism is perhaps the unbearable form of wisdom. And it is at the same time also the absolute proof that there is no comfortable form of wisdom. Like it is truly so. And it's just great example of these absurd thoughts, and at the same time proof of that there is no comfortable form of wisdom, or there is a wisdom but it is not comfortable, so it's just is so. The rebel does not ask for life but for reasons for living. It's so true. The rebel does not ask for life but for reasons for living. And there is this saying, I rebel, therefore we exist, and we are alone. It's the mindset. The conqueror is always right. We have all talked about it. The conqueror is always right, while the loser is always wrong. Fundamental human relations are thus relations of pure prestige, a perpetual struggle to the death for recognition of one human being by another. And there is this... True philosophy is the negation of philosophy. No religion is my religion. No philosophy is my philosophy. It's just like the surrealists act like art. Like you don't know what to make of this saying. And this is the trust about the life generally. The victor will always be the judge, and the vanquished will always be the accused. And it's very interesting. He mentions Nuremberg trials, and basically during that period, when these trials were going on, at the same time, German people, and I'm neutral here. I'm just providing the facts. Like the millions of German people were killed, millions of German women were raped, or basically they had two choices. They could have tried to run and they would be shot, or they would be just raped. And this is, by the way, during the time where these trials are going on. So this, by the way, this rape and sickness was not going on only in Germany, but basically specifically Berlin transformed into hell, and there was basically the scapegoat for all the unjust and etc. Became not this few majority, basically not those few individuals that actually started all those things and did those, but entire people. Basically, the German people were like, and the anti-Germanism started to appear, and they became the embodiment of evil, and German people were essentially destroyed, killed, raped. And while these trials are going on, the Conqueror is always right. It's a perfect example of the Conqueror, that the Conqueror is always right. Like, even if you accuse someone of being devil, and because of that you are punishing them, like, what's the point of your accusation if you are yourself a devil or transform yourself as a devil? And now I understand that some people say that things were behavior of the Red Army, and which was also another devil. But that's the thing, that the Conqueror is always right. The Conqueror is always right. And and the general, like the most vast, I did not even knew of these things. For example, what happened, this mass rape and destruction, and basically, and I know, then people like wonder, there's like why German people don't have like sense of humor, or don't smile often, or don't have like good comedians or something like that. Like, you have not experienced that things that culture was forced to experience, and as a loser, you cannot even complain, or you cannot be like, oh, that's what's wrong. Because why? Because you are not considered as a human being, and that's a very ancient thing in human beings, like to essentially to dehumanize the others, to dehumanize the mass number of people, or them. You will be shocked beyond belief if you were to like deeply study those things and what was going on there. I've seriously dig that thing quite deeply, and like you'll be just shocked, and you just like the surrealism art, like I wasn't in a state of, I wish there was some sort of a supreme being that would judge all those things somewhere, supreme judge, and I hate that feeling, because this is so, I guess, so wrong. But again, there is no justice. That's also true. If the German people are incapable of victory, they are unworthy to live. And basically, we can understand it as a mindset of the elite, and at the same time, there is a lot of Nietzscheanism in this generally. It is so, like the weak and unfortunate should just die. Like, there is a lot of, and we are again expressing, trying to understand the philosophy, like the German philosophy, how it led to that. And it's the same approach. Like maybe this was directly what Hitler was thinking, and not the officials. There was very few that actually were the ones that did everything, and not those innocent people. And basically, the history is just history, and it's always written by them winners. And it's surprising how many people are simply not aware of those things. And by the way, this mass rape and etc. did not happen only in Germany; it happened in Poland and etc. But okay, let's don't talk about history right now. You can dig all those things and find yourself. There are some videos and a lot of articles and stuff. But if the German people are incapable of victory, they are unworthy to live. There is a lot of Nietzschean thought in here, whether we like it or not. And it is just at the same time like I don't know what to say. Like, if the German people are incapable of victory, they are unworthy to live. Like, it's like the master that is cruel to his, basically the master that is cruel to himself and cruel to others. Basically, this is the ultimate goal. Because basically, what were, for example, the reasoning of Nazis, etc. Well, on the reason for Hitler was like, nobody will ask the victor how he obtained that victory, right? Because the winner is always right, and that's it. Like, they would be easily able to hide those things that they did, evil they did, for example, and nobody would be able to ask them winner anything. And to think that the Allies, for example, were any better is just not true. I mean, just because it's not like the Gulag camps and etc., it's not well known, etc., and the millions of people that died within Soviet Union were killed within and or sent in some. Just because that is not known, or things about other allies. Okay, come on, like look at the history, and you will find things. And so many things are just hidden because we simply don't know, and we will never know. Because the winner, and this is where basically the philosophy enters the corner, and generally the World War II has destroyed the German philosophy. This generally destroyed the German people, at last spiritual and mental. Because the amount of the German people got rid of the tyrant and madmen, but they lost their freedom and they were tortured as embodiment of evil. So when in reality, I think Plato said this when so many centuries were like, to be nice to the people, because war is initiated by very few, and those quarrels by very few, not the majority of people are innocent. But like the history of the World War II or general world wars are like completely biased and not taught correct in schools or in etc. places, because the winner writes the history generally. Obey, said the Frederick the Great to his subjects, but when he died, his words were, "I am tired of ruling the slaves." The Prussia. Basically, this ruler says it like, "Obey," said the Frederick the Great. Like, so the master says the obey, and when he dies, it's like, "Well, I'm tired of ruling the slaves." The society based on production is only productive, not creative, and this is the key thing to say. The society based on production is only productive and not creative. And what actually brings the progress is creative people, and not just a production, but the creative, and this are basically unreasonable people that are creative. Or we can say that unreasonable people are only creative. Modern conquerors can kill but do not seem to be able to create. Artists know how to create but cannot really kill. Just a thought, it's like it reminds me of the saying like how basically there are super smart people compared to the arrogant individuals that are insanely sure of themselves and etc. But those smart people, capable people, essentially don't have faith in themselves, and they constantly doubt themselves, and basically they don't want to rule essentially, and they're like, "Oh, I cannot become. I don't want to be elected because I'm not sure of myself." etc. Just because you doubt yourself on that point, it's good. Those people that are the truly dangerous people are those that think that they know it all and they can do it all alone, and they don't doubt themselves at all. That people are truly dangerous, not those people that have that thinking. Art, at least, teaches us that man cannot be explained by history alone, and that he alone finds a reason for his existence in order of nature. Mm. Well, first of all, history. The man cannot be explained by history. Well, the man cannot be explained by history because history is biased, and history is written by winners. And just because certain, and at the same time, what is observed and people pay attention in history is not the thing. Like just because something happened in that year, it doesn't mean anything. The reason is like what brought there, why that happened, what kind of human relationships were going on, the people, etc. That's the thing, and not just years. So, but human existence, basically, this is very romantic. And in this saying, he kind of basically Briax is kind of neutral. Neutrality tries to be basically tries to be neutral, and it's at the end of them. And he tries to say this, and by saying this, he's kind of, I think, contradicts himself, because this is the corner where basically the victor will always be judge and the vanquished will always be accused, and he tries to reason there as well. But really, the conqueror is always right. The strongest is always right. The imbecile criminals seem positively refreshing in comparison with our highly intelligent executioners. And this is truly so. One cannot say that nothing has any meaning, because in doing so, one affirms a value sanctified by an opinion. Nor that everything has a meaning, because the word everything has no meaning for us. He kind of also contradicts himself here, because of the first part. No longer have the strength to smile. This is the trust about the European culture, because who lost during the, for example, World War II? In the cultural sense, to lose something, you should have something. The German philosophy is destroyed. It's dead. It just disappeared. And Europe suddenly became the puppet and the thing between these two gigantic powers, and the Europe itself. Europe got divided between those two powers mainly. And here's the secret of the Europe, is that it no longer loves life. Why do these pretty-minded Europeans, who show us an avaricious face, if they no longer have the strength to smile, claim that their desperate convulsions are examples of superiority? And this is the thing, the strength to no longer have the strength to smile. This is basically somehow the European, the philosophy existed there always. Like this somehow entered the corner, and time will show us the thing. And this is it. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to hit the like button and comment down below what you think.